Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. This is the news at 10, live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight,
Ijoma Oyato.
Hello and welcome. Tonight, Lamido of Adamawa and delegates to the National Conference threatens walkout with other delegates from the state following voting pattern disagreement. The Sultan of Sokoto leads Nigerian Islamic Council members to the villa, alleges poor representation at the confab. Suspended CBN governor to appear before the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria. And efforts to locate 122 objects fail in search for missing Malaysian plane.
And on business news tonight, acting CBN Governor Sarah Alade inspects burnt CBN office in Lagos, says burnt documents are backed up in recovery system.
In sports news, 2013 FIFA Under-17 MVP Kelechi Iheanacho, Isaac Success and 33 others named in Flying Eagles provisional squad for the AYC qualifiers.
I'm Linda Kibe, and from Abuja, the Senate confirms Mr. Godwin Emefiele as new CBN governor. He is to take over from Sanusi Lamido Sanusi.
It sounded like a position being canvassed on behalf of a section of the North when the Lamido of Adamawa, northeastern Nigeria, that's His Royal Highness Muhammadu Barkindo Mustafa, dropped a bombshell informing the National Conference audience that the region would simply stage a walkout if pushed to the wall. His reactions followed Justice Idris Kutigi's question on whether the conference should call for a memoranda from the public on the voting pattern in decision-making at the conference.
If something happens and the country disintegrates, God forbid, many of those who are shouting their heads off will have nowhere to go. But, Mr. Chairman, I and the people of Adamawa and many others have got somewhere to go. I am the Lamid of Adamawa, and my kingdom transcends Nigeria and Cameroon. The larger part of my kingdom is in the Republic of Cameroon. A part of that kingdom in Cameroon is called Adamawa State presently in Cameroon. So you see, if I run to that place, I will easily assimilate. But, Mr. Chairman, please, I want to plead to us. Mr. Chairman, I want to plead to us to strictly tread the path laid down by Mr. President in his address, which includes pattern of voting. Unless we want to disobey our president, then you can do whatever you want. And if you are pushed to the wall, we will easily walk out of this conference.
Well, the chairman of the National Conference has adjourned today's plenary till Monday next week for further consultations on the voting pattern and other rules to guide the proceedings for the conference. Earlier, a select team made up of delegates such as Chief Edwin Clark, Professor Jerry Ghana, Mr. Tanko Yakasai, Mrs. Josephine Aneni, Mr. Gali Naaba, and retired General Ike Nwachukwu were expected to reach a consensus on the controversial issue of voting modalities to be adopted for the conference. Tempers flared at yesterday's proceedings as delegates were divided over which voting pattern should be adopted for the conference. The chairman had a difficult time maintaining order as most of the delegates tried to speak on the matter.
Cloud of unresolved voting modalities still hanging over them, delegates at the National Conference resumed on Wednesday and focused on other issues. The chairman started by seeking the opinion of delegates on whether or not the conference should call for memoranda from members of the public.
When the president appointed advisory committee, they went around all the zones and called for memoranda. In those memoranda, each contributor indicated areas they would like the conference to cover. If we could get those memoranda together and send them around, it will save time. Because if we ask for memoranda, we have to give at least 2 or 3 weeks. And that will be taken out of our time.
I believe very strongly that we need to call for memoranda from the public. But I would like to suggest that when that advertisement is made, if we all agree, that it should be stated clearly the various committees and the details of the committees so that people can send specific recommendations and submissions to help the committees do their work.
It can only enrich this discussion, and it is good that we include other views. I know that if an advert goes out today, you will get people tomorrow.
Eventually, the matter was put to a vote.
Do you authorize the Secretariat to call for submission of memoranda from the public? And for how long? 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
The delegates agreed on a 2-week period. The deputy chairman then read out a list of delegates to meet with the chairman on the issue of the voting modalities and come up with a consensus on the issue, after which the chairman called for an adjournment.
The meeting stands adjourned to the afternoon session, 4 o'clock, please.
Delegates spoke on the development and the composition of the consultation committee.
The difficulty and challenge with that for some of us is the same as the bigger group. What was the criteria for nominating these people? But I hope that we trust that they would reach a conclusion that would be acceptable not just to the rest of the audience, but to Nigerians outside who sometimes feel very marginalized by the selection criteria of the whole delegates.
These are leaders I would trust, who have been involved in the process for a very long time, and therefore their negotiations will be tailored and anchored and predicated on our collective interests. That is my expectation, and that's what I believe our leaders will do.
I don't have any objection to the composition because we won't be all called. Few must be called to make peace, where there's disagreement.
When the delegates returned later, it was to another adjournment.
We may not proceed with this meeting now. We have to adjourn because we have to go back and finish our meeting. And then when we finish, the people that we call randomly here, who are holding a meeting, will come back to brief you of our discussion. All right. If they are able to see you, because we live in different places, we may have to adjourn till Monday. Yes. Because they have to make comprehensive report to you of the meeting we are holding.
The delegates were divided over the adjournment, even though most of them say the adjournment is for the best.
It's rather disappointing because I'm ready to work. And I think that this issue that has created so much problem need not create the problem that it's creating. Very simple. We just put it to vote and we vote on it and we move on.
The proceedings, the rules, the codes that guide the total proceeding must be agreed on. If we don't, all other things are exercised in futility. But once this area is done with and we are set, there will be movement, and the movement will be very fast.
Adjournment, well, is necessary, but unfortunate. But I really think that by the time we all return on Monday, the citizens of this country, the critical mass, should expect that we are going to fast-track all the other precedents.
If you watch the debates, you can see that some people have lost their cool. Some people need time to go and calm down. Some people are fixated about certain positions and certain issues.
So for now, all the positions and ideas that are to be canvassed at this conference will have to wait. Nigerians will also wait to understand how this voting issue will end. Will it be a 3/4 majority or a 2/4 majority? Lanre Lasese, Channels Television News.
In the meantime, the Sultan of Sokoto, Mohammed Saad Abubakar III, led some members of the Nigeria Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs to President Goodluck Jonathan at the presidential villa to protest what they described as the marginalization in representation at the ongoing national conference. The Secretary General of the NSCIA, Ishaq Uluyede, told State House correspondents after the meeting that Muslims in the country were not comfortable with the composition of the membership to the dialogue.
He has given us reasons to reassure the Muslims that Muslims in Nigeria are not deliberately marginalized, and he has asked us to convey the feelings of the government, the genuineness of the government, the fairness of the government to the entire populace. That if there are issues that are not as they ought to be, they were not definitely deliberate. And we want to believe that Mr. President had told us his mind, and we also want to believe that it's right it's proper to protest. It's also proper to assume that a leader will always be just.
Well, in another reaction, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Odeyin Ajumogobia, has faulted the composition of delegates to the national conference. He told journalists in Lagos today that there's an obvious disproportion in their nomination. He says that the youths are the future leaders and that the poor representation leaves a lot of questions.
I think the debate in Abuja is a good thing. One of my criticisms of the composition is that if you have a country that has 75% of the population is between the ages of 18 and 35, then I think there's a disproportion in the representation of the young people who should have a voice in the way we govern ourselves, because they are the future, they are the leaders of the tomorrow, and they should have a say. A significant number of them should have been in Abuja as well, and not people who have been in government since 1960. I think, yes, we need experience, but we also need the energy and the passion of youth who also, we're in a technological age, and I think that they have a say as well, and I don't think their voice is loud enough in that debate.
In part 2, after the break, Senate today confirms Godwin Emefiele as new CBN governor. That's coming up in a moment. Please stay with us.